And with that, the NHL 2023 draft has come to an end. The draft is always an exciting time to be a Montreal Canadien, and this year was no different. This year's was filled with a lot of surprises and told us a lot about the current situation in Montreal. So in today's video, let's take a look at what we learned from this year's draft. For starters, we are going to be talking about David Reinbacher and how he was the pick no matter what. We're also going to be taking a look at the ages of the prospects we selected and what that means for us rebuild-wise. And finally, the positions of the players we drafted and what's so significant about it. But just before I get into that, if you are new here and you do love Habs news, Habs rumors, Habs content, all of that good stuff, then I invite you to subscribe. I'm currently trying to hit 2,000 subscribers, and it would mean the world to me if you hit that subscribe button. Anyways, without wasting any more of your time, let's dive right into this video. So, David Reinbacher, the 5th overall pick for the Montreal Canadiens. I will not lie, last night I was quite upset, and today I'm a little more optimistic about it. He was a very good pick, maybe not the one we all wanted, but he's going to be one hell of a player for the Montreal Canadiens. The reason we picked him was quite simple, and it was because we lacked skill on that right-handed side for the defenseman. And David Reinbacher at 5th overall would have been the best player available suited for the Montreal Canadiens' needs. That is how Kent Hughes and the gang looked at it. So basically, we didn't exactly pick the best player available, but we kind of mixed up the best player available with drafting for need, if that makes sense. Another thing to note is that all these rumors of the Montreal Canadiens possibly selecting Michkov, maybe going for Leonard, I think that was just the Habs bluffing. What I mean by this is that the Montreal Canadiens knew that David Reinbacher was their pick, but they tried using the possibility of selecting Michkov or Leonard as leverage from teams like the Flyers and Washington in the hopes that they would trade up and give the Montreal Canadiens extra assets, and in the end they would get extra assets and still select the player they wanted in David Reinbacher. But once they saw that the Arizona Coyotes were in fact looking for a defenseman, they realized pretty quickly that David Reinbacher was not going to be available after 6th. So I think there was no trade because of that, and David Reinbacher was just the pick all along. Now, the next thing that we learned about this draft was that Kent Hughes wanted players that were closer to the NHL, and he did that by choosing players that were a little older. Out of our 9 picks, I believe 5 of them, of the players, were 19 or 20 years old. This tells me that Kent Hughes wants to end the rebuild as quick as possible, and he's taking a bet on these kids, hoping that they'll be able to translate their game or develop well enough way quicker than prospects that are 18 years old. Another way to back this up was with the Newhook trade. You know, right before the trade was announced, we heard that Kent Hughes was looking for an age-sensitive player to trade for, which just really tells us that he wants a group of guys that are going to grow up and develop all together. Now, with the age discussion out of the way, we learned one more thing about the players that we drafted, and that was we drafted based off of need and not best player available. We drafted 3 goaltenders. That is crazy. I would have been happy, let alone with just Jacob Fowler as our goaltending prospect that we drafted, but we went out and drafted 2 more. On top of that, we drafted a hell of a lot of defense. You know, we took David Reinbacher because he was a right-handed defenseman, and then at 110, we took another right-handed defenseman. When you're looking at a draft class which is supposedly one of the highest offensive, talented forward groups in a long time, and our first couple picks are defensemen and goaltenders? I mean, you can't hide it. That is the definition of drafting based on positional needs and not the best player available. This also tells me that I'm pretty sure Kent Hughes does not have faith in Caden Primo, because, I mean, that'd be kind of a waste using 3 picks on goaltenders if you did have faith in one of your young goaltenders. It also tells me he has a lot of faith in our young forward group, and he doesn't think he needed to add a top 10 scorer in this draft class. You know, he seems like he's fine with Caulfield, Doc Suzuki, Slavkovsky, Newhook. These are the guys he's going to roll with, and every other pick was used to fill up positional needs this year. Now, finally, the last thing I learned was that Kent Hughes loves family. Our good old story of Arbor Xhekaj, you know, Costco to the NHL, everyone loves the story, but Kent Hughes just needed to make it a little better, and he used our first pick in the 4th round to draft younger brother Florian Xhekaj. This is not the first time he's brought families together. You know, he was collecting Pitlicks like it was nobody's business. Now he's got the Xhekajs. And on top of that, he's taken other people's brothers too. Instead of Casey Middlestat, he took his younger brother Luke Middlestat. And I'm pretty sure they're not related, but he took Sam Harris, shares a last name with Jordan Harris. Coincidence? I think not. Anyways, guys, that is all for today's video. We learned a lot about the Montreal Canadiens in this draft. Whether that was that the Montreal Canadiens used this draft to select players based off positional needs, to draft players based off of the timeline of the rebuild, and how Kent Hughes has a lot of faith in our current forward group. So if you did enjoy, don't be afraid to hit that like button and maybe even consider subscribing. Now with that being said, I'll see you all next time. Take care.